about all the banquets I've been to and dinners I've been to. You know, I get seated in the back for some reason. And I get a set of speaker space. A little disappointed. I mean, where's the same food you guys? No little mints or little chocolates or... The cool thing is, you guys in the back, you can take the next 15 minutes and do a power nap. Nobody will know. The important question for the evening: did everybody do their wordle for the day? Okay? Anybody not know what wordle is? Thank you, thank you. I'm not going to think what it is because I'd like to savor these few minutes of being socially superior to those who don't know what wordle is. But anyway, I really am so very grateful. Grateful for all the donors who keep us in their prayers, donate their time and finances, provide a safe place for traumatized kids who are suffering from emotional and behavioral disorders. A safe place where kids can work on resolving their destructive behavior and earn high school credits at the same time. So on behalf of the staff and students, McAdams, and the community, I just want to thank all of you donors. I hope this evening I can lend some clarity about the mission of McAdams and why our community needs someplace like McAdams. There's three things I want to think about and share this evening. Is we have a problem. I didn't cause it, you didn't cause it, but the reality is there are kids going uneducated. They're not receiving education because of their behavior, simply because of their behavior. And the second thing is McAdams is the best we know how. We're helping those kids meet those needs. And obviously, in our community, we can't do it without donors and help from our community. There's one big misconception, I think. Some people think McAdams is replicating services that we already have in Wichita. We have public schools, right? We have DCF to care for our foster kids. But what happens when kids get expelled? In Kansas, kids can go 180 days full school year from attending school. And think about this: each time a foster kid gets moved from placement to placement, they end up in a different school district. And so there are so many reasons why these kids are falling behind. And these are bright kids, okay? Think about this: some kids in the foster system will have moved, attended 5 schools before their junior year. So why are kids being expelled? Why are kids being moved from placement to placement? Usually their behavior. Because of school expulsions and youth in foster care without a permanent placement, these kids can go all year without attending school. McAdams believes that regardless of a child's behavior, their education shouldn't be disrupted. And this is why our community needs McAdams. We educate kids that other people won't. Current educational philosophy allows a child's behavior to impede their education instead of educating the child about their behavior. Removing a kid from school only compounds their problem. Some research suggests that 30% of expelled students will end up in the judicial system, have a decreased chance of a stable life. Some research says 65% of foster kids will never graduate from high school. McAdams focuses not only on behavior, but on the root causes. And just briefly, we do 4 assessments for our kids. We'll do an assessment share about our program with others, and I sometimes see that look in their eyes that my grandpa would call a caster in a new paper. You can tell that as I talk about our students, it's hard to understand who we serve. I thought I would share a few stories to help you better understand the kids we work with every day. Growing up, there was a little boy in my neighborhood whose father was an abusive alcoholic. The boy never got into trouble at school, but he struggled academically and socially throughout elementary school. Kids called him stupid because of his speech impediment, because he was bigger than most kids. They just assumed that he had been held back a year of school. He wore a lot of hand-me-down clothes, so his jeans usually had patches. He was an introvert, quiet, but the kids thought he was odd. He never really had a best friend. The neighborhood boys didn't want him playing football because he was so big and they thought he played too rough. Some of the parents in the neighborhood told him not to play with their kids and please stay out of our yard. He never really understood why. He spent most of his childhood staying out of the way of adults, trying to not be heard or seen. He'd hide in his room, reading books and working on projects. He'd find projects outside the house he could work on. Too often he woke in the middle of the night with his parents fighting. When his father was home during the weekend and evenings, he would do his best to stay out of his way. Family meals were kind of tense because you never knew when there was going to be an outburst of anger. When his house became too chaotic and the neighbor kids were busy playing games, he would head to the place he felt the safest. There was a large tree in his backyard. For most kids, their home was their safe place, but for him, it was a tree where he felt the most comfort and safety. Climbing up as high as he could in the tree, he'd sit quietly. He'd watch the birds chase insects, build nests, he'd watch the branches blow in the breeze. While working in the family garden one Saturday morning, his father came out to pick vegetables. His father wasn't wearing a shirt that day, and the boy noticed these marks on his back. When the boy worked up enough courage to ask his dad, he said, "Dad, what are those marks on your back?" His father replied, "Scars." "How did you get them?" the boy asked. "Some are from belt buckles and others from rakes and hoe handles." Still not understanding, the boy asked, "But how did you get them?" His father replied, "When my dad was drunk, he sometimes beat me with whatever he had in his hands." That little boy was me. I wish there would have been McAdams as my dad. A place where adults could pour their lives into his life, showing him the love and respect he deserved as a person created in the image of God. And I wish his emotional scars could have been dealt with and not handed down to me and my siblings. You know what I thought about people at the age of 11? Don't trust them. Don't let them get close, because they're only doing it. I know firsthand what it's like to be a kid and feel discouraged and rejected and not understand why and know what to do about it. Our community needs a place like McAdams to provide that tree, that safe place, where kids have 2 hours each day to actually be a kid. Free from worrying about their addiction, their abusive father, or the responsibility of taking care of siblings. While academic research is the backbone of our program, think the heart and soul of McAdams is built upon the experiences of a little boy and the hopes and dreams of what life could be and not what it has to be. As a side note, by God's grace, my father overcame his alcoholism by the time I was in junior high. And I'm proud to say that he was a good grandfather to my children. They all have fond memories of him, as they should. 80% of our kids are raised in single-family homes. At least half of our kids in McAdams have one parent in prison. Almost 50% of the McAdams students experience substance abuse in the home. So Michael arrived late to school one Friday morning, and I noticed he was noticeably agitated. I asked him, "How you doing?" He ignored me. During the week, Michael had been struggling to stay awake in class. His white t-shirt, which he had worn all week, was now dingy white and stained with dirt and perspiration. The kids were starting to tease him about taking a bath. As he was changing into his McAdams polo shirt, I asked, "Michael, is there anything I can do for you?" He looked at me and said, "I don't know where my mother is." He explained that the previous night his mother left saying, "Be back in a little while," but she never returned. Michael, his siblings, and his mother were homeless. They were staying in different houses almost every night. He said he had not been sleeping well because his bed was a pallet on the floor behind the couch. Well, I guess it was a balcony on the other side of the couch. The adults were partying and doing drugs. That morning, just hours before we had this conversation, Michael waked in a stranger's house with no sign of his mother. He gathered up his siblings, he walked into a relative's home before walking to the house. Michael was 14 years old. Think about it. How would your child feel waking up in a strange home with no parent? How painful do you think it would be to see your mother choose drugs over you almost every day? Here's what's interesting. You know, Michael could have stayed at his relative's home with his other siblings that night. But guess what? He came to McAdams. Why? Because McAdams is the only stable thing in his life. It was a safe place. Over 70% of our students have an emotional learning or a disability. Stephen was a new student, and when asked to do a reading assessment, he defiantly said, "No, I'll tell you exact words." No, it's close enough. After spending a little bit of time with him, this isn't the first scenario like this. After spending a little bit of time with him, I said, "Stephen, can you read?" Looked at his feet and said, "No." So when our caseworker called mom to let her know that Grace spent a little bit of time on reading, she knew what was going on. She said, "Can I come to McAdams and learn to read with my son?" Family issues are often the causal factors contributing to our students' learning disabilities. So McAdams will find creative ways to include families, support their parents. Over half of our kids are fearful in their own homes, where they experience abuse and lack of emotional support from parents. Brianna came to McAdams a few years ago. She was in the foster system, was angry, and mad at the world. The first few years in our program, she never finished a full day in the classroom. And often she would walk out of the building completely and be on the run for a few days. While talking to Brianna during one of her angry tirades, she said, "Why don't you just kick me out of the program?" I responded, "Because all of us at McAdams love you. We care about you." Made her even more angry. She yelled, "You don't even know me. You can't love me." Brianna, when was the last time someone told you they loved you? She retorted, I don't know. I said, when was the last time your mother told you that she loved you? Her mood changed. She became quiet. Looking off in the distance, she said, I don't remember. These are the traumatized kids that we work with. They're hurting and fearful. Frightened and hurting children turn into angry children. And without guidance, they behave in unacceptable ways. And I'm not making excuses for behavior. I'm not against having consequences for a child when they break the rules. We use consequences all the time in the past. If you break something, you pay for it. If you can't pay for it, you do chores around the school until your bill's paid. The philosophy that I struggle with, the philosophy I disagree with, is that it doesn't seem right to continue handing out punitive consequences without teaching a child how to cope with their pain and fear, which again are the root causes of their destructive behavior. The theme of our banquet is Passport to Freedom. We believe in McAdams, we believe that knowledge is that passport. Not attending school decreases knowledge, increases poverty. The acronym we use, McAdams, is FREE. It explains the areas of poverty we focus on: financial, relational, emotional, and educational. To be very honest, McAdams' philosophy is founded on the first seven of the Hebrew Bible. The prophet Hosea warns the people that they were perishing because of their lack of knowledge about God. Now, whether you believe in God or not, the truth is that without knowledge, you will always live below your potential. As a child, an adult said two words to me that changed how I thought about myself. In other words, that adult gave me knowledge about myself I had never considered. My father let me try out for 7th grade basketball. I never played basketball, but made a team. None of us did. By 9th grade, I became the second team to score and rebounder in the city. And after one of our games, the teammate's mother said, Chuck, big game, as usual. The two words that caught my attention was not the big game. It was as usual. Big game was a compliment about one game. As usual was an affirmation of my abilities. It was the first time I ever remember an adult affirming me. The knowledge that an adult saw value in me began the process of changing the way that I began to see myself. And I want to say to my staff, you have no idea how wonderful my staff is. They do an excellent job loving and affirming our kids. They do it day after day, and sometimes it's very tough. But they love the kids. And our kids don't realize how lucky they are to have our staff. So staff, thank you. This is our new video, our debut this evening, and so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Some kids are expelled, some kids are in the foster program.
Kids that have their belongings in a paper bag, they go from house to house.
There are a few who are just angry and they don't want to talk to me or anyone else.
They take a little more time, a little more understanding, and those are the kids that we try to reach.
Just 10 minutes ago, a kid who's been in foster care for 11 years told me that 90% of the time, the adults who want him to trust them turn out not to be trustworthy. And that's the norm for our kids instead of the exception.
If anybody's familiar with what's called ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience, all of these kids have high ACE scores. And so if you have high ACE scores, it's said that you'll either have health problems or interaction with law enforcement, negative interaction.
It's usually the ones that are on the lower socioeconomic scale that have no other recourse available to them.
Well, in this facility, we average around 50 kids a day, and probably 40 of them on any given day are going back to the community. So, and almost 100% of these kids have school issues, either attendance, behavior, or just have not engaged in school. So there's a nonstop need for this.
Hundreds of kids get expelled from school. Hundreds of kids are not attending school just because they're not good with the regular public school system.
We want to help these kids get through high school because that's a milestone, and if they can get there.
McAdams Academy offers lots of times the last best chance that some of these kids have for an education.
That's one step further along the way, and if they don't get there, then there's a whole variety of issues. Milestones are not going to hit, successes are not going to achieve, and likely we're going to be funding them in another system.
Well, when you follow that path, a large number of Black and brown kids are the ones that end up in the penal system. So we were, in a sense, providing that school to prison pipeline by expelling. Because if you're out of school for a year, what's the probability that you're going to go back? And if you don't go back to school, then the probability is even greater that you're going to end up in prison. So you see how it balloons.
So growing up here, being born and raised in Wichita, I grew up around gangs, guns, and drugs. I was blessed to meet a family in our community that needed more resources. A young lady had been expelled from school and running away from home and being raised by her grandmother, and she started school here at McAdams. And so I came out to check on her. I met Chuck, some of the other staff, and really loved what they were doing.
I cannot blame others. I cannot blame my son. He just started struggling. So he ended up he got into a problem. Made a comment, he got into a problem. So he ended up being on the U. So after being the U, we tried to enroll him. Obviously, they were not going to take him back on East High, and nobody would. It was pretty hard for the family. It was kind of we were struggling, and then that's when we knew about McAdams. I didn't know it was that exists a school that would take kids like they got expelled and nobody wants them, because we felt like, what are we going to do? I mean, he's barely starting high school, and like, now what's next?
We understand that it's difficult to have 3 kids, and all of a sudden this third kid is like, oh my gosh, what happened? What did I do wrong? My other kids weren't like that.
So Kasim was expelled from the school he was attending his 8th grade year about November. Just one middle school, one high school. And I was just kind of given no option, like, he's expelled, but he has to continue to go to school. And I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I became familiar with McAdams when I served on the local school board, USD 259. And at that time, my focus was on students that were being expelled, and there was no alternative program in place.
The town I'm in, there's not like alternative for middle school kids. So I was kind of in a bind. Stumbled upon McAdams and came up here and enrolled him. He did really well his first year. So we decided to go ahead after his expulsion date to continue to let him stay at McAdams.
So when they refer us here, I mean, I was expecting like the staff, like being rude, and because the kids they're taking. And we got surprised when we met Chuck and their stuff. I mean, they were. I mean,
pretty good.
They were awesome. Like they took like a weight off of us, like a concrete, or I mean, slab on our back. They said, "Okay, don't worry, we'll work with your son."
The couple of things we primarily try to impress on kids: respect for authority, and that actions have consequences. But the Holy Spirit tells us when to show grace.
I think, again, this is the compassion for the people that McAdams is serving is a heart issue.
So I've gotten in my car, driven down the street for a kid who's walking away, and I got this old convertible. I make a deal with him. We'll put the top down, we'll drive around a little bit. Kid says, I've never ridden in a convertible before. And then he comes back.
Some of the society likes to react with, you deserve what you get. You've written the check, now you got to pay for it, consequences, whatever. All that's not invalid, but there has to be a way to push beyond pointing fingers and getting right to the needs that need to be met.
So at times, there will be an incident. So earlier this year, there were 2 kids, very angry, very destructive, in the hallway, trying to get into the classroom where things are relatively calm, other than the people banging on the doors. And then pretty soon, they've calmed down enough, and I'm talking to the teacher on the radio, and I think maybe you could come out and talk to these guys for a little bit. It actually was Rebecca. She's out sitting cross-legged on the floor with these 2 kids, showing them some stuff on the computer that will help them get schoolwork done. And once again, I just love Rebecca because she's able to get down on the floor with the kids. She didn't have to be in this school. She's good at it, and she wants to be here, and she's got the gifts to make her effective here. And it's a picture of Christ.
Our ratio is lower than public schools. We try to keep a 1-to-5 ratio.
He's very smart. However, he struggles in a traditional school setting. So having smaller class sizes, less people to interact with throughout the day was really beneficial for him.
That ratio is important because the higher the ratio, the less time you have to get to know these kids.
But as we went and keeping up with him, he started learning something new about discipline. As soon as he showed up here in the morning, we were dropping he has to put a polo shirt and look nice and good discipline. So he started doing pretty good.
And so Chuck's passion and the school really has a place in my heart because there's 2 things that can really turn a kid's life around. One is education, and 2 is employment. And so those are the goals for my juvenile intervention unit as well as a board member for McAdams Academy.
He went to West High, right? And he was doing good there till the pandemic started. When that school, the online school, started kicking in, he started at home.
He was frustrated.
He was so frustrated. He wanted to come and finish his senior year here. He was behind. Real very bad. And he started here in October, entering November, and by January, he was done with his senior year. He graduated and he kicked the discipline kick that he had 2 years ago here, that even he switched his friends. He switched the people around him. Even he enrolled in the Marines, and he's still waiting to be called. He trains twice a week with them. I talk to Chuck about this. We feel like very blessed, very, very blessed. There's people that are willing to work with kids when you think there's no option, when you think that everybody's shutting the door on you.
Above all, like, he's so lovable and he's so smart and he's got so many talents. And they know God has a bigger plan for him. I know he has a bigger plan for him. I give that to McAdams because they invested in him when they didn't have to.
I know from personal experience the difference that education can make in your life. And because I know that, it's very easy for me to see education as the equalizer. And if you see education as the equalizer, then you understand the need to make sure we're educating all students.
The worst thing you can do to a kid, I would recommend to other families to never give up on him or her. I'm not saying I accept what he's done, because that's not right, but do not give up on him. There's always good people that are willing to help you.